Would you stop buying eggs or bacon if you saw photographs on the products of how those animals were genuinely, honestly kept? That's what wildlife expert Chris Packham is calling for. Similar to those on cigarette packets, where it shows the actual effects of cigarette smoke on your lungs and the damage that smoking can do to you.
Well, the TV presenter's taking part in Veganuary. Says that current packaging is misleading, doesn't reflect the conditions that animals are reared in. We're also joined... Well, he's with us live from his kitchen in Southampton, and we're also joined here by top chef Richard Corrigan, who thinks the idea is ridiculous and is turning us into a nanny state. So welcome to both of you, gentlemen. To Chris, look, you know, you're a leading light for all things animal rights, and everyone knows that. A lot of hugely influential, important stuff that you've done. My problem with the veganism debate is that I don't care if people want to have a vegan diet. I really don't. I don't believe in the nanny state about food. You want to eat, you know, McDonald's or vegan food, you do what you like. I do care when, you know, vegan stormtroopers charge into restaurants in Brighton and start screaming abuse at meat eaters and adopting some weird high moral ground with people who choose to eat meat. That's where I get annoyed.
Is that what you think this is?
Preaching.
Is this the high moral ground? If you put on corned beef...
Well, I think it is a bit,
a picture of the beef and the conditions that it's kept in.
So, Chris, explain why you're not chief nanny trying to take the high moral ground about all this. Or are you taking the high moral ground?
Well, but... No, I'm not taking the high moral ground at all. That's never my approach. I'm merely encouraging people to think about their diet, and I think there are three good reasons for that. Firstly, their personal health. We know that eating too much meat is bad for us. Secondly, we've got the environmental impact, and we know that ecologically speaking, meat eating is extraordinarily expensive. And given the burgeoning human population on the planet, there is no doubt that we can't continue to eat meat at the rate that we're doing so at the moment. So I'm encouraging people to think about where they get their meat from and what its environmental impact is. And then the third component, and it's one that does impact on many people's choices when they think about leading themselves towards a more vegetarian or even a vegan diet, are those animal welfare conditions. And whilst we are able to implement laws to a greater and higher standard in some cases in the UK, we're not overseas. And when we go shopping to our supermarkets, therefore, we can't always be assured of that the products that we get, the animals have been kept in humane conditions.
So
and as a consequence of that, I think that if we displayed that, people would think twice about buying them.
What would you know, on this pint of, or 2 pints of milk here, we have pictures of cows in a dairy farm. You went to a dairy farm and immediately stopped consuming dairy. What is it that you think people are not having their eyes open to?
Well, one of the problems that we have in the UK is our great disconnect from farming and food production. This leads to all sorts of problems, principally a lack of sympathy for farmers and the problems that they have raising food and turning a profit when so much foreign material is imported into our supermarkets and the supermarkets are bullying our farmers into a corner. So aside from that, we've got people not knowing where that food comes from, particularly young people. And you hear these horror stories where they think that chickens lay 1 egg a year and cows only produce 1 pint of milk. When I went to that all-indoor dairy where these animals never went outside, the idea was so alien to me, and I thought to myself, well, I don't have the time nor the ability to source milk where I know it comes from a collection of animals that are being well tended for and are living happy and healthy lives. And as a consequence, the easiest option for me was just to give up.
OK, Richard Corrigan, you're a farmer's son.
Yes.
And you're one of the top chefs in the country. What is your response to this?
Well, first of all, I worked on a dairy farm for most of my young life. I milked 120 cows every morning. The indoor dairies that Chris is talking about is something alien to me. I'm talking about grass-fed, outdoor, milk twice a day, and most delicious product, most nutritional product you could give young children, families growing up. Absolutely huge part of our evolution. Totally with you on that, Chris. Nothing to argue at. The indoor large-scale piggeries and chicken productions, I'm with Chris on. I'm not going to disagree on everything. It's not all farming. there is some great farming out there. People attacking farmers. You attack me. I feel, labels like this makes my blood boil.
Why? Why?
Well, for example, milk prices just recovered after 4.5-year terrible time. Beef prices hasn't changed in 4 years. There's no one making fortunes in the countryside. It's policy, part of government policy, part of the free market. Making standards better in Britain just to suit some, and then importing cheap food like chlorinated chicken from the States because their standards are so bad they have to chlorinate the chicken, doesn't make sense to me.
OK, Chris, let me come back to you. My issue again with the vegan debate, as Britain appears to be going ever more vegan, is that if you take some of the staple favourite foods of vegans, avocados, almonds, we now know there is a lot of environmental damage and social damage to the countries where these are taken from. The environmental damage of flying them all over here and so on. Real damage to insects, millions of bees in California, which produces 80% of the world's almonds, get killed, right, in the production of almonds. So I wonder how much vegans, as they take their halo and put it on their heads about this, whether they care about the little critters, the little creatures. And, some people laugh, but I'm like, well, life is life. I mean, if millions of bees are being killed to sate a vegan's almond lust and the planet is being damaged by flying it all in from California, what is the moral distinction here?
Well, I think this is for us to explore, isn't it? I can't disagree with you at all. The last thing we want to do is jump out of the fire and, into the frying pan, or the other way around. So we have to explore all of these things. I've got this little graph here, which comes from Science Journal, which shows that the emissions, the land use, and the water use of dairy, traditional dairy, is much greater. But you're right, Piers, when you say down here, look at the water use that almond milk produces. And we know that, almonds are grown in California, like you say, where they've got severe drought conditions. They're extracting huge amounts of water to grow those almonds. And as you point out, they're moving bees all around North America. It's terribly expensive on these. And it is about all life. It's not just about the cute and the cuddly and the farm animals. It's about the environment and the sustainability of it. But look down here, if you look at soya and almond, you'll see that they consume a lot less of these resources. So it's a process of exploration. There's no doubt about that. And I don't have a halo. I don't take that holier-than-thou approach. I am merely asking people to think about what they eat and their impact and to explore that.
But you don't drink
I've
milk.
been making
I'm going to pick you up
myself,
one thing, Chris. You've become quite evangelist about this in the sense that you don't drink milk, you don't eat bread, you don't eat any meat, presumably? Right?
No, I don't, no.
Right. So, I am left with the obvious question, what do you digest? What do you take in? Are we going to remove all pleasurable...
Without meat, bread and milk, he can't eat anything.
Well, no dairy, no bread,
all
no meat.
fruits and vegetables and pulses.
You're left with what?
I suggest.
Plants.
There are plenty of very tasty alternatives that I'm beginning to discover. This is a new process for me.
But you know what?
But how many of those
going vegan doesn't mean going without flavour.
It
doesn't mean going without quality.
All right, but Chris, let's take the tasty alternative of the year so far, the Greggs vegan sausage roll. Palm oil, which is, of course, stashed all over loads of vegan products. So again, I come back to the hypocrisy, which is if you're going to eat loads of stuff like that and claim the moral ground, it's nonsense, isn't it?
Well, palm oil is something that gives us grave concern, and you're absolutely right. Many of the things that I have switched to, I've looked on the back of that packet when I can struggle, to understand the food labelling that's there, and I've seen a lot of palm oil. And this is a process of change that we're going through. But the one thing we have to be absolutely clear about, Piers, is that, we have to cut down on our meat eating, not through any personal choice, but through the enormous cost and pressure that this is putting on the environment. Our population cannot eat the volume of meat that it's doing now. We've got expanding populations in India and China who are equally eating a lot more meat than they have done in the past. We're losing vast areas of the world's forests, which are, repositories of our biodiversity. All of those little things, all of the life that you and I love so much, simply to produce vegetable protein to feed to animals in an inefficient way.
Let's bring in Richard again.
Hang on.
If you were going to invest in a future business, Piers, would you invest in McDonald's or Greggs at this point? Because Greggs are thinking about the future, McDonald's probably are not.
Well, actually, McDonald's are doing vegan Happy Meals, so they're all at the same game, and they're doing it to make money, even if the products they're producing under the vegan label, as in the vegan sausage roll, are actually less healthy for you than a McDonald's cheeseburger.
Okay, Richard.
So, Richard, you've heard. Look, there are clearly things that Chris says where I'm sure we can all agree.
Absolutely.
Right? Nobody wants the unnecessary torture and inhumanity of animals, right?
Yeah, but vilifying farmers, basically for things they have no control of. For example, British beef farmers are four and a half times more efficient than beef farmers in South America. Fact, it's absolutely noted.
Well, Richard, isn't the irony that if we put pictures of the horrific conditions that pigs are kept in some factory farms overseas, if you put that on overseas bacon, you might promote, actually, British
10,000 pork farms
farming.
in Poland, you mightn't want to eat pork again, frankly. But let's be honest with you, we're all in a little bit middle-class mode. We all earn good money. We're all very successful.
And cheap food comes at a cost.
And by the way, we don't have the choices that other people have to make. We have any choice. We can go into any top-end supermarket, spend £100 and have dinner. Most people don't have that choice. That's why there's Trussell Trust up and down Britain, which is a fabulous organisation, an amazing food bank, and people use them of all families. There is huge food poverty in the UK.
Yeah.
1 in 5.
Are you saying that we have to compromise our farming standards in order to produce that cheap food?
No, but we have to be aware there's no such thing as cheap food. When you get lots of cheap food, you get lots of wasted food. There is something I would love to see happening. If you can cook well, you can eat well, you can shop well. People have the basics of good cooking. How to make a bowl of porridge, water, porridge, some fresh honey. Most nutritious, beautiful breakfast you can have in the morning. How many people? Why are we going to a box opening a very expensive?
Then it's vegan.
Well, absolute. Well, I'd question that. But a very expensive box of cereal that most families can ill afford.
I think that, look, it's been a really good debate this morning. Chris, thank you very much. And Richard, thank you very much.